Why Epping could be a Pyrrhic victory. Epping is a victory. There's no doubt about it. It's a battle won, and that's got to be a good thing, right? Well, yes and no. The problem that we got with the migrant hotels is, or one of the good things about the migrant hotels is, we know where all the migrants are roughly. It's not good because they're moving about the community. To me, they should be locked up somewhere. They should be in camps. But this government ain't going to do that. So the problem is this: if the migrant hotels start falling like dominoes, then the Home Office is duty bound to provide these migrants with accommodation. And that accommodation is going to be in working class communities from all sections of the working class community, all races, all backgrounds, will be having migrants planted into those areas because the government has a duty to do that. They need to find accommodation for them. This is going to do several things. First of all, it's going to push the cost of low cost housing through the roof because a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, companies are going to start buying up old wrecked properties, doing them up to any standard they can get them to that'll be suitable for the Home Office, and they'll start bunging migrants into those HMOs or flats or whatever it's going to be. The second problem is that it's also going to put a massive strain on the rental market. So, young people, if you're a young person and you happen to be unlucky enough to land on an old geezer like me's YouTube channel and start watching it, well, if you're a young person in this country and you're looking to get on the housing ladder, and we all know what it was like when I was young, we could buy houses. My house was £27,500 when I bought it. And obviously, house price inflation, etc., it's worth considerably more than that. But even then, when you're first buying your first house, it's a stretch. You're first renting a house, it's difficult. But it's your home, it's your little nest, especially if you've got a wife, a girlfriend, a family, kids. That's your little unit. You move out from under your parents' protection, under your parents' accommodation, and you've got your freedom. Well, you've got some freedom. But the reality is that that will not be possible for the vast majority of British young people from whatever background, whether you're black, white, whatever. It's not going to make any difference. You're going to pay the price for what these successive governments have done with this migration madness. And all of you people that are shouting, refugees are welcome here, and calling us horrible far right lunatics, knuckle draggers that are standing outside the hotels protesting, demonizing us, you're going to be penalizing every single working class young person in this country: Muslim, Christian, Sikh, Hindu, atheist, communist, fascist, whatever background politically, whatever background religiously, doesn't matter. They're all going to pay the price for your absolute insanity, for your placard waving, for the evil, and I'm going to call them evil people in government that have allowed this to happen. What is going to happen when the hotels close down is all of these migrants are going to be, this is the first thing that's going to happen. All of these migrants will be housed in what's called dispersal accommodation. Maybe that'll be some army camps, maybe it'll be some old RAF bases. A lot of it's going to be HMOs, a lot of it's going to be cheap housing, and it's going to lead massively to house price inflation at the very lowest end of the market. And that's not good for young people. That's not good for young working class people. That's not good for my son. My daughter's lucky enough to have her own house because she got in before the housing prices started lifting off in that sector. But most people are going to be complete, and most people have already been priced out of the market. So that's one of the problems: house price inflation, not being able to get on the rental market. The other one is, remember, these people are still unvetted. These people are either pending their applications being examined, or they've had their application refused, but they're appealing it. In other words, they're saying, oh no, we should be here, we've a right to be here. We know what's going on. We know the scam that's being perpetrated. And the illegal migrants are one part of the scam. They are illegal. They shouldn't be here. They've come here illegally. They should be arrested. They should be deported. If they committed crimes, they should be imprisoned and deported. And actually, I would rather they were just deported to serve the sentences in Pakistan or Afghanistan or wherever they've come from. And I'm sorry, my heartstrings are not getting pulled anymore for people coming across the channel on boats. When we see from the stats, I think it's 80% of them are males between the age of 18 and 40. I'm pretty sure that's what the stat is. I should have looked it up before I did this video, but I'm pretty sure that's what the stat is. So these young men, these unvetted young men who've traveled through goodness knows how many safe countries, because they've certainly gone through France, they must have gone through Italy, or they've almost certainly gone through Italy or Spain or wherever. But they have been through countries, because if they've come across the Med or if they've come across from Turkey, they have come through safe countries. They've come through the European Union. They shouldn't be here. They need to be rounded up, they need to be put in prison camps, and they need to be sent back. And you say, well, what about the women? What about the children? To be quite honest with you, there's not that many women and children. And obviously, we're not without compassion. But at the same time, if they still came here illegally, they should be detained and deported. I know that sounds very harsh, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. But that's not the only problem. The problem with these unvetted young men, look at the crimes. Look at what's happened. Look at Thomas, I think it was Thomas Robertson or Robinson in Bournemouth. A young man, 20 odd year old. I think he was 20 years old. And he was murdered by an Afghani who pretended to be a child. Now remember that. A lot of them are pretending to be children with the beards and the teeth missing and all the rest of it, pretending to be children. This guy pretended to be a child, went and sat in a class with school children. He'd already committed 2 murders in the Balkans. Then he came here and got his hat trick and murdered a young man with probably a glittering career in the Royal Marines ahead of him. Absolutely despicable and disgusting. So I'm sorry, my compassion ometer runs out there. I've no compassion for that Afghan migrant, and I've no compassion for any of those men that are coming across here that have come from safe countries and are coming to here because it's Treasure Island, and that's what it is. Round them up, lock them up, send them back. Simple as that. Now, the other thing is, let's think about community cohesion. So let's say the vast majority of these people are coming from Islamic Muslim countries, just for example, and they get put into areas where there's a large amount of Sikhs, a large amount of West Indians, a large amount of Nigerian Christians, cultures that are different to them, or they get put into an area where it's pretty mixed. It's kind of 50-50. People get rubbing together quite well, and Muslims and Sikhs are kind of rubbing together, and they've been there for years, and there's not really too many problems. You put guys in these areas that, again, pumped up on testosterone. A lot of them have come from war zones. A lot of them may have PTSD. A lot of them may have serious problems. A lot of them may be criminals. We don't know what they are. This is the whole point. We don't know what they are, but we do know that this is the way the stats range goes. It's either Afghan men are 3 times more likely to commit sexual offences than British men, or it's 22 times more likely. That's the margin for error. Even if it's 3 times more likely to commit sexual offences against women, that's 3 times too much. And if they didn't come into the country, we wouldn't have this problem. And you say, but what about the war? What about the poor interpreters? What about this? What about that? The vast majority of interpreters have got out of Afghanistan. There's other people that are coming into this country. We don't know whether they're associated with the Taliban. We don't know whether they're associated with ISIS-K. And even some of the interpreters, remember, a lot of them played a double game. Whether you like that or not, whether that offends your sensibilities. And if you're a veteran watching this and you're offended by this, tough. I don't care. Because my wife, my daughter, and my granddaughter are more important than your sensibilities, and more important than some guy coming in from Afghanistan that got paid pretty well by the British Army. So I'm sorry not to get the flags out and celebrate too much about Epping. And I think what the people of Epping have done is fantastic, and it is a victory. But is it a pyrrhic victory? Is it a victory that is too costly to be counted? It's certainly not going to win the war. The only thing that is going to win the war is hard politics. The only way this is going to be sorted out is if we have a government that sits down and says, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at every single asylum claim that's been made in the last 10 years. We're going to examine them forensically. If those people that have made those asylum claims have made them illegitimately and they shouldn't be here and it's been waved through by the Home Office, two things are going to happen. The asylum seeker is going to be arrested and detained. The second thing that's going to happen, the person that's handled that case, whether he's a lawyer, whether it's the legal team, or whether it's the people in the Home Office, they're going to be criminally investigated. That's how serious this is. Then people coming into the country, as soon as they come in their court, and you'd have to beef up border force massively, you'd have to beef up the police massively. As soon as the people that come into this country are caught, they are arrested and they are put in prison camps. And you might have to build new camps to do that. And we're not talking about tokenism like Nigel Farage announced, I think 650,000 he was talking about deported. This needs to be in the millions. This needs a martial effort to carry this out. And it has to be done for the stability and the cohesion of our country. Absolutely has to be done. So the illegal situation, we'll talk about legal migration in another video. But the illegal migration has to be massively clamped down on. The people that are coming do not need to be treated as asylum seekers who are desperately in need of safety and protection from the British state. They need to be treated as criminals, migrant criminals. And a lot of them are criminals because we know about the crimes that they've committed. Afghan guy in Bournemouth murders aspiring Royal Marine. Afghan guy in Hartlepool stabs his Christian mate because he's annoyed about Palestine, then goes out and murders a 70, I think a 74-year-old man. And there's numerous others. We could just Google it. Google migrant crimes and pick a location. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, and I'm not going to talk about the case because obviously we don't want to be prejudicial. But there's a case very recently that I believe could have been a Southport. I really do believe that, and I think thankfully the police caught the guy before it became a Southport. But it took them, I think, 9 days to catch him. But they did catch him. So credit to the guys. SWAT team came down. The guy must have been deemed such a threat that it wasn't your normal Bobby on the beat that lifted him. It was a guy with whatever rifle they have now. I don't know. It's probably a G36 or whatever it is they use, but pointed a long barreled weapon in his face and basically disarmed him and arrested him. So there was obviously some sort of a threat there, and from what we hear, he was. Well, I'm not going to go into it, but anyway. So that's what we're facing, and we're facing not just those things, but also. And I think in many ways, what the people in England and what the people in Northern Ireland and what the people in the Republic of Ireland are doing is absolutely magnificent, because brave men and women are taking to the streets. They're standing for their communities. They're not breaking any laws. Okay, there might be some minor infringements somewhere along the line. They're not breaking any laws. This is a largely peaceful movement. There have been flare-ups. But I'm going to say something. I'm not justifying any flare-ups, and I'm not saying there should be flare-ups. But I understand why they happen. I'm not justifying anything. I'm not saying it's okay, but I understand it. But we've been doing peaceful protests in my hometown in Bangor in Northern Ireland for 2.5 years. Not one arrest at those demonstrations, not one. And we've kept it like that. There's people doing peaceful walkarounds the towns just to make sure nothing's going on. But we shouldn't really have to be doing that. But we are doing it. And the other thing is, when you look at the patriotism in the south of Ireland, and I've said this so many times, we're going to say it again. I never thought I would see the day when I would look at 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 men and women walking through the streets of Dublin, waving the tricolour and singing Irish songs. I never thought I'd celebrate that. I'm from a British Army loyalist background. That sort of stuff used to not scare me, but I didn't like it, okay? Now when I see that, I celebrate it. On Friday night, I'm not going to say what area they were from, but on Friday night, we had Catholic lads from a nationalist area of Northern Ireland with us on Friday night. And I'm not going to say any more than that because, again, I'm very aware that some of these lads will get intimidated and bullied in their areas by Republicans. And again, you know, this movement is not a paramilitary led movement at all. It's not like that. It's all sorts of people. If people have been in groups in the past, that's none of my business. If people have been in the British military, which a lot of them have, people even been in the police and the prison service, all sorts of different backgrounds come to our events and support us. And we have support from right the way across the community. The leaders of Irish republicanism and unionism, loyalism, are not saying too much about this, apart from people like Jim Allister and a few others, right? But the reality is that it's not racist thuggery, as the PSNI chief constable said. It is people who have a genuine, deeply felt and passionate concern for the country. And finally, talking about demographics. And again, this is for another video. But I do not want the United Kingdom to be an Islamic state within the lifetime of my grandchildren. I don't want that. I want them to live in a free, prosperous United Kingdom. I don't want my grandchildren to grow up in a country that is filled with conflict. The two worst massacres in what we could call the new troubles, the migration related terror incidents. The two worst attacks were carried out by the children of asylum seekers, or by the children that came here after conflict in their country. I think it was Salman Abayadi. I forgot the name wrong because I know there's two Abayadi brothers. Salman Abayadi, I think it was, that killed himself in the suicide attack on the Ariana Grande concert. His parents were radicals from Libya that sought asylum in the United Kingdom and were allowed to make their home in the United Kingdom. And as far as I know, the two boys that carried out the attack were rescued by MI5 and special forces and put on either a British frigate or a boat and brought across the Med and brought back to the UK while the conflict was ongoing in Libya. So I'm sorry, don't you dare speak to me and tell me that migration, that asylum seekers are not a problem in this country, because by goodness they are. By goodness they are. When you think about it, was the Ariana Grande concert that got me involved in doing this. When I saw that, and I saw Safi Rose Russo, and she could have been my daughter, she could have been my granddaughter, she could have been my niece. She actually looked like one of my nieces a bit, okay, when she was young. I'm not going to say my niece's name, but she looked like one of my nieces, right? A bit like my daughter when she was young. And I looked at that and I went, I can't stand idly by and do nothing. I can't sit on my hands anymore, because I've known about this stuff for years. And then Axel Rudabakana, or whatever they call him, I don't even like saying the monster's name. Let's look at him. His parents came here from Rwanda. What happened in Rwanda? Let me think. Oh, yes. Tutsis and Houthis. What was it? What was the other one? The Tutsis and the Houthis, or whatever they were. Two different tribes in Rwanda went at each other. And by the way, correct me on that, because I think I got one of the names wrong. It's definitely Tutsis. Can't remember what the other tribe was called. Two tribes in Rwanda went at it hammer and tongs with machetes, hammers, and axes, and 1 million people were killed. 1 million people chopped to bits in a massive, in a very, very short period of time. Now, I'm not saying the parents were involved in that at all. I don't know anything about the parents, but there's muscle memory there, because it was very similar to what Axel Rudabakana did when he walked into that dance class. And also, I personally believe, I can't prove it. I cannot prove this. And again, this will be covered up until the cows come home. But I believe that Axel Rudabakana was a Muslim convert. And I'll tell you why I believe that. I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I believe that. Yes, he was radicalized by all sorts of other stuff, incel stuff, looking at the white supremacist massacre, I think in New Zealand, looking at the many of the other massacres that were carried out by just nutcases. But he had an Al Qaeda manual. Now, I've been doing activism for a long time, and actually, reading documents like that as an interested party that wants to oppose this sort of stuff, it might be worth doing for me. I've never done it. I've never gone looking for it. But the fact that he was able to find, sorry, not an ISIS manual, an Al Qaeda, the fact that he was able to find an Al Qaeda manual, download it, study it, and make rice in, would suggest that he was probably influenced by their ideology. And what the government said was, or what the powers that be said, oh, it was a mixed ideology. He was very confused. He was just a confused young man. Well, he spent his time watching ISIS videos. The sort of Ken Bigley, even though he wasn't ISIS, but the sort of thing. People getting burned in cages, people getting their heads hacked off in an orange boiler suit, that sort of stuff. He spent his time watching that. And are you telling me that he wasn't a convert? And then when Tommy was in Belmarsh, when I met Tommy in December last year when he was in Wood Hill, Tommy said to me, he says, brother, he says that guy's a convert. That's what the prison officers were telling him in Belmarsh. So the reality is, if those two families had not come to this country, and I want you to think about this, and you bleeding heart liberals who weep over the children of Gaza, what about weeping over the children of Manchester? What about weeping over the children of Southport? What about weeping over Peter Lynch? What about weeping for Lucy Connolly? Oh, no, you're trying to get her banged up again and put back in prison. Shame on you. You're as much of a problem as anyone else with your little heart shape, don't look back in anger, bumblebee tattoos, and refugees are welcome signs. I used to have a banner that said refugees are welcome, migrant criminals aren't. I'm not going to even use that anymore because you know what? I don't want anyone coming to this country anymore. I don't care. I'll be honest with you. I don't care what's happening in the rest of the world at the minute. Our country is in grave peril from these people that are coming into our country. And if it's even only 1 in 100 that are a danger to our women or our children or a possible terrorist or a possible murderer, if it's only 1 in 100, it's one too many, and that's it. It's enough for me to close the borders forever. Not forever, but you know what I mean. Close the borders as long as we need to until we get this under control and we get this sorted out. And finally, on the issue of demographic change, as I've already said, I do not want people coming to this country from war-torn Islamist states or states that have an Islamist insurgence going on in them. I just don't want them here. And I know that sounds harsh. Unless they're genuine Christians or genuine apostates from Islam, I don't want them in the country. I would take Christians from northern Nigeria all day long. I'd take Christians from Syria all day long. But anything other than that, I ain't interested. And that's not being callous. That's not being hard-hearted. That's because I love my country. I love my people. I love my God. I love my church. And I don't want anything to happen in this country that's going to destroy our country and take it into a downward spiral to turn it into Mogadishu in the cold and wet and grey. I mean, at least if you're in Mogadishu, you get a suntan. If we turn the UK into Mogadishu, what's the upside? That's not going to happen. I will strain every fibre of my being to make sure that doesn't happen. Anyway, guys, wow, that was a long rant. I wasn't expecting that to go on that long, but it's serious stuff. Is Epping a pyrrhic victory? Don't attack me. Think about it. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all soon.